Hello, my little
So,
subscribers.
you
It's
want to
time
write
for another video.
characters, because you got a story in mind and you want to do characters. How do you write a character? Well, quite frankly, I don't know the answer, but don't worry, I can give you tips. Anyway, as I've mentioned in a previous video talking about why you should write your stories, I've mentioned the idea or the concept of you should do it yourself, but it's not always as easy. But I'm well acquainted with the concept of the fact that it's not as easy as just someone says you do it and then you go and then it's done. It's never that simple. But I want to try to give some tips today, and one of the tips I want to do is characters. I think that's always kind of the thing that is always kind of important. I know there's 1,005 videos on how to write characters and how to do this and how to write character arcs, and honestly, those are a lot of the good resources. I'm not gonna pretend that I'm the one and true gospel on how to write characters, but I just want to give some of my tips. And really quick mention: this is not sponsored, as I'm not remotely big enough to have sponsors, and I don't think these people do sponsors. There's this great book, I love it, called How to Write Character Arcs. I forget. I'm really bad with names, but I'm gonna put it on screen here. If you really want to write characters, you just want a good read this book. It's great with character arcs, and not like in the, oh, your characters must develop and grow kind of way, as the book literally has an entire section on the flat character arc, aka the character that does not really change in the course of the story, but changes the world or just influences the plot. Like think like Captain America. This is actually an example they use in the book as Captain America as a flat arc protagonist, but great book. I get a lot of inspiration from how to write this book. It's one of my favorite books ever. I fully subscribe that every aspiring writer of books, movies, TV shows, or whatever should read this book. You will love it. But that's beyond the point. So, in my opinion, one of the tricks about characters is that you want to make them unique. And I know this sounds obvious, but you truly do not want your characters to come off as, I'm the protagonist, and I do X, Y, and Z to have no emotion. It's not as like, oh, you need to come up with the most wacky zany idea, or oh, your characters need to be super deep and feely. They just need to feel like characters. And, like, I'm going to try to explain this in the way I can. Like, part of how I do some of my videos, and I'm writing for characters that I don't own, like Captain America is a great example, in my opinion. I'm going to use him again because he's one of my favorite characters, is, you know, in my opinion, when a character truly comes into their own, when, to some extent, you don't have to write what the character will do, you just know what the character will do, if that makes sense. Like, for example, if I put Captain America on a street, he's walking on the street, and he sees a little girl whose cat is stuck up a tree, we all know what Captain America is going to do. He's going to climb up the tree and save the kitty. This isn't a question. This is a really simple example, but it shows an understanding of the character. Now, characters can't surprise you, of course, but in my opinion, you truly know you've created a good character when the character itself, when the character itself just kind of know what the character will do to some extent. This isn't as simple as the story becomes predictable necessarily, but you, at least when it comes to situations the character would regularly find themselves in, I think it's good to, in my opinion, you really create a character, or you understand the character, but really, when you create a character, when you can just intuit what they will do, when you put them in a situation that you will understand what they do. And I have a particular writing core challenge or little test I recommend that you do. Now, a lot of people would say, write your character down and then write a short story, and that's good. Writing down projects is always good. However, I would suggest something different. I would suggest you taking several characters that you like. Doesn't even have to be from the same universe. You could say, oh, Captain America, let me think, King Arthur, and Zane. Yeah, let's go with that. Let's say these are your 3 favorite characters in the world. King Arthur's kind of bad. Jack Sparrow. We'll go with Jack Sparrow, yeah. Let's say Captain America, Captain Jack Sparrow, and Zane are your favorite characters in the whole wide world, and you think they're just cool and awesome and amazing, and you would love to write for them. Now, here's a challenge. Write a story involving all 3 of them. I know you say, but isn't that just bad fan fiction? No, stop. It's not about the quality of the story. Although working on quality is never a bad thing. What you want to do with these ideas is that you want to understand how you would write a character. You need to understand so you want to pick a character that you like. that you like, and you need to honestly like them here. This isn't like, oh, I think okay. You need to honestly think that one of your favorite characters, at least enjoyable to watch, and then proceed to write a story where you put them in a situation, preferably one the characters that you, to your knowledge, have not encountered. So you give them this dynamic. And the reason I say suggest characters that don't come from the same universe is so the characters haven't met each other. So you can kind of, so you don't have to, so you don't rely on rote memory of what the characters do when they interact with somebody. How would Captain Jack Sparrow react to Captain America? How would the two get along? What if they were forced to work together? How would those two deal with that alliance? This is an example because, to my knowledge, the two have never met each other in fiction, so this is fertile ground. This isn't about making an original story or coming up with the best story ever. This is about a test in character writing. Once, in my opinion, you can get down to some extent what a character will do is helpful. Now I might say, but if I know everything the character will do, then that character is kind of predictable. And you're right, there is some truth to that. But here's where stage 2 comes in. Stage 1 is just understanding the character. The stage 2 is understanding what a character will not do. This sounds tricky, but think of it like this. It's not so much that the character has hard lines, like, in my opinion, in writing, any character put in a situation when you're writing for them has options they can take. Options they can take include things they are physically incapable of. So, for instance, Superman can choose to fly in a situation, but Batman can't because Batman can't fly. But Superman could, if let's say Superman is fighting somebody, well, he could choose to kill them, or he could choose to not kill them. There is nothing physically stopping him from just smashing Lex Luthor's head in and then calling it a day. And regardless of whether you think he's right or wrong for doing that, that's a character thing. So you need to understand, and it's more complex than just that. But think of it like if there are 4 doors in front of a character, 4 doors they can go down. The character may be capable of going through doors 1 through 3, but for some personal reasons will not go through door 2. So the character will go through then only between 1 and 3. This sounds kind of weird, but it makes sense. There are you call them limitations on the character, but it's more just how the character acts. A character thinks differently than some others and has different rules and things to follow. So the idea is that, like, for example, Captain America, as a World War II soldier, may be a lot more willing to kill someone than, say, Superman. Captain America may have no problem if he sees, like, some German Nazi soldiers gunning them down with little to no thoughts, although Captain America does not relish killing. I'm just saying, like, he kills Nazis before he has no problem doing it, whereas Superman may view that as an atrocity. This is a really simple and cartoony example, not cartoony, but a simple example, but it gives you an idea. So characters, and there's more simple examples, like, for instance, if a character has a strong dislike of fire, the character will not use fire in a situation. If a character has a preference to do something, if a character really likes to use their magic to get rid of a problem, they may use magic even if it's a suboptimal move, or even if it's just one option they can choose. A character with preferences will do that. This extends more broadly to character writing. In my opinion, that's what it is. A character very rarely has one choice they can do in a situation. They have multiple. Going back to my Captain America saving a kitten example, how does Captain America save the kitten from the tree? Does he somehow convince the cat to come down peacefully? Does he climb up the tree himself? Does he jump up the tree to save the kitty? Does he use other kind of things? There's a lot of options Captain America has. Does he teach the kid how to climb the tree so she can save the kitty herself later? There's options here. All these things are things Captain America could do or might do. But Captain America can't, for say, bend reality so the cat never went up the tree by time traveling, because Captain America can't do that. Or he wouldn't kill the girl and kill the cat because he doesn't do that. You see what I'm saying? In stage 3, once again, I highly suspect, and once again, before I go on to stage 3, once again, go back to my example of writing a short fanfic with some characters. Put them in situations where they're feasibly forced to make a choice, and then think about what choice that character would make. Not what they could make, what they would make. Then stage 3, the final stage. Once you have mastered these 2 arts, and by mastered, well, you never really master, but once you understand it internally, and one short story is probably good enough to do this if you do it right, then you move on to stage 3, making your characters like that. Because all this time, you've been using pre-made characters. You've been using characters right out of the box. You've just been using, like, fresh characters, not fresh characters, but, you've been using characters that are pre-made. We all know what Captain America does, what Jack Sparrow would do, what Zane might do. But now you need to make your own character. You need a character to stand on the same pedestal as these guys. So how do you do that? Well, first thing, here's my personal tip for characterizing. One, don't worry about making a Mary Sue or overpowered character. I'll explain why. Because if we just make your character, in my opinion, characters should first be defined by their strengths and skills, what they are best at. And I know this sounds weird, but this includes personality. You know what I mean? Think of what the character's best traits are. Think about just abstractly the best traits are. Now, this is also influenced by the world they currently inhabit. So, for instance, if we're in Stone Age caveman time, you're not going to get, Nikola Tesla building, his strength is controlling electricity or something. This is not going to happen. Wrong setting. After that, but, think of the limitations. Then, when you think about the strength and skills, think about more personal details. Think about, what nation they come from, what do they look like, what are some small quirks or habits or personality quirks they have, okay? Once you master that, once you do that, then I want you to think of their weaknesses. But not think about, what's arbitrary weakness I can slap on them. Think about between their skill sets, powers, and abilities is their natural weakness. Like, for instance, if you write down that character is really strong and really tough, then he might be a bit slow. Think about where the natural cracks in their abilities or powers or skill sets or personality show up, and then that's where you put the flaw. Because in my fundamental worldview, or at least not fundamental, but how I write characters, at least when they're good guys, or at least protagonists, you want to focus on what makes them good, or what makes them interesting characters. Villains are slightly different as their flaws are a bit more important in a lot of ways, but that's a slightly different topic. But they follow mostly the same rule anyway. Now, small tip 3.5, I guess you want to call it. Don't worry about, but is my character going to do X, Y, and Z, whatever those limitations are. In my opinion, when you're writing a character, don't concern yourself too much with what the character, don't concern yourself with random limitations on your character. And this goes two ways. For instance, if we're making a story set in 1800s England, don't necessarily worry that your protagonist isn't a rich upper-class Englishman from old stock. You don't have to worry about that. And vice versa, don't worry about making a modern story in America with your protagonist being like a black lady. It doesn't matter. Don't think about those details right now, unless they're important for the story. So, for instance, if your story is about set if you're set in Southern America during the slavery, then yes, stuff like race could be an important detail. But if the story does not matter, if more personal if a detail doesn't matter, don't worry about that until later. It just kind of comes to you, in my opinion, what a character should look like and certain details like that. Now, of course, if your story does require that characters have certain traits, they must be strong, they must be capable of flying, they must be this skin color, that, or whatever, then note that down. But don't be overly concerned with details that do not necessarily matter. Just think about what's the core traits your character needs to have, and then focus on that. Don't focus on superfluous details like what their hair color is, or how many belts they keep on their legs, or details like that, unless they matter to the story. Like if a story is about a boy who loves astronomy who gets to go into space, and that becomes an important detail. But the story is not about that, then the character liking astronomy is not an important detail. And step 4, and this is going to be the hardest one ever, don't become too attached to your characters right away. At first, you want to be very fluid with your character. Work out where the points are, and then slowly solidify points as they become consistent. So, for instance, as you think about a character, write down points or think about points that you like, that you like, oh yes, I want this. But don't become solidified with everything right away. Think about other ways you could do it, and then work around it, and just kind of put it together until you find the best possible traits of this character. I don't necessarily mean that they're perfect, just that they make the most interesting, fun character you can do. And step 5, and this is going to be the hardest for all of you, I assure you, this will be the hardest probably, or maybe step 6. show it to others, and talk to others about it. This can be difficult if you're working on a project that you're trying to keep secret, but find someone you can talk about to. Because if you don't, you'll become in your head, like, especially people like me, I'm sure all of us are like this a little bit, we become dead set on this and that, or we think about certain details more than others. So a person who isn't in our headspace, which is literally everybody else, might not get certain details. So if you don't explain something or something doesn't add up perfectly, you can't know that. This is why you always want to get an outside opinion, preferably a friend, but someone you know can be honest. You don't want someone who's just going to butter you up and say, oh, your ideas are perfect. You want someone who can compliment you when you're right, of course, but also willing to say when this doesn't make sense or this should be reworked. They don't necessarily be an authority figure over you. They just need to be someone who's willing to point out the flaws and what you get right. They don't even have to be working on your project with you. They just have to be someone who's willing to hear you out. It's going to be hard because there'll be moments where you really think you did something right, and then it's just going to get ripped into. You're going to have moments where it's like, but I like that idea, but then people point out that it's not good, or it's not as good as you think it is, or it needs more explanation. Don't shy away from that criticism. It's only for the better. Even if you become dead set on using whatever they criticize, find a way to make it work, or work around the criticism, or otherwise deal with it. So, for instance, if your character needs to be like this, then don't worry. Like, I don't know. It's just don't be afraid of criticism, and have someone who's willing to criticize you when something doesn't make sense. And step 6, the final step, is actually write a story with the character. I know this sounds weird, but it's true. Making the best character in the world doesn't matter if they don't actually have a story to inhabit. So go out there and make those stories, because once you have your characters, it's time to go. So hope this video helps all of you out a little bit, because, character creation is a hard thing, and I can only hope the best for you guys. So, see you later. Hope to see those characters someday. Yeah. Hey, why don't you hit that sub button? You're gonna become a subscribble. Get to see my content quicker. Wouldn't that be nice? I bet so.